everybody, and welcome back to Objective Personality Bootcamp. Last time we compared TI and FI with each other. Today we have a similar challenge, NI and SI. Austin kindly went through the Facebook group and found us a topic and also provided some clips for us. So instead of Austin, we have Bar here today. How are you doing, Bar?
Hey, Mina. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm really excited to have our video about NI and SI. As an NI lead, I hope that I can provide some blast input.
Oh yeah, you will definitely be able to provide on that front. Blasting isn't my forte. I'm doing my best here though. So since we're talking about NI and SI, it would be good to actually think what those are. Both are introverted organizing functions. So both attempt to limit the amount of new information when possible, attempt to build on their known information, and avoid gathering for the sake of gathering new, just for the sake of new. Instead, gather mainly for their known box or known topic when required. And the main difference between the two is that one operates in the abstract plane and one operates in the physical. So NI is more in the realm of plans and organizing concepts and ideas, whereas SI first takes care of the physical organizing, whether on paper or in the physical, organizing objects, whatever. The realm of physical is rather wide. So both attempt to get to the same results in different planes of operation. Do you have something to add, Bar, or should we carry on?
Basically, I think that the biggest difference between NI and SI is how much information do I need to show you how to get from A to B. So if I am an NI lead, I will need much less data points, sensory data points. I will be able to explain a process with 7 steps. In comparison to an SI lead, where they need a lot of continuous data points that they can use. Yeah. And they will explain the same process that I could explain in 7 steps, they will explain it in 700 steps, because they see all the details that I usually say, people will figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, so you have the trust that with these small data points, you get the idea expressed in a way that people can understand, whereas someone with strong SI needs a lot more data to prove the point, because they don't necessarily have the trust that the concept gets carried from smaller data. Okay, yeah, that was a very good add-on. I didn't think of that. We thought we'd see few people who we have typed recently on the class. So we are comparing Barbara Corcoran and Gretchen Rubin. So both are organizers, both do it in different ways, one in the abstract and one in the physical. They also happen to have same decider axis, although opposite saviors. So that may bring some flavor to this, but we are mainly concentrating on how do they organize, plan, or deal with concepts or ideas today. So let's go to see our first clip.
Before we moved up to 94th and Park, we were on 72nd and 3rd, a far more convenient location. It felt like everything was within a block. But Tommy was going to a kindergarten that was at 89th and Madison, St. David's, and I just wanted to walk him to school. I just had it in my head. I had to walk him to school. And as it turned out, my office was on 61st Street, and it gave me a longer jaunt to walk to work. So it really worked out beautifully, and I love it up here. It's about as close as you can get to being in the suburbs without really moving to the suburbs. It feels quiet up here. I really like it a lot. I'll tell you how many hours I spent thinking of every detail. I'm very anal on building every inch of the apartment because I thought of what do I need a spot for and how does it work. And so this I knew was the right place for this. I knew I needed wine bottles. Everybody kind of needs wine bottles. What's great about this kitchen is the way it's laid out. This is really where I cook here. And to tell you the truth, this was a mistake. I should have pushed that cabinet back. It feels a little crouched. Then, to try to fix up my mistake, I gotta wet my fingers to pull this out. Here's the chopping board, right? Ooh, it wasn't even clean last time, okay? But the truth of the matter is it's a pain in the ass because it moves around. So I tried to fix my misjudgment of putting this cabinet in. I should have left this cabinet off so that I had more room to chop because this is the chopping board where everybody works, okay? Bill is not the most organized guy. So I keep buying stuff for Bill so that he could organize himself. Actually, I have to be honest with you, I am impressed. He must have cleaned this up. This is usually, things fall out as you open it.
It's organized.
This is Bill's closet, which for a grown man shouldn't really be. He should have a better closet. It's double racked. It's so hard to get his stuff out.
The mail center in my kitchen. I haven't found a way to organize it yet. It's a mess. Well, I want to show off my mail center in my kitchen because I love it. In here, each in its own compartment, I have bills and letters, my checkbook, envelopes, stamps, a return address stamp, staples, a tape measure, packing tape, scotch tape, screwdrivers, the cards that we use to get into museums, rubber bands. Everything we need is right here. And you might think it's harder to keep everything in a very specific place, but counterintuitively, I found that if you know exactly where everything goes, it's easier to put things away, and it's certainly much easier to find them. And I also find that although I have to guard my special drawer from the rest of my family, they are pretty good at putting things back because they know exactly where everything belongs. And if they see it out, it's very obvious where it's supposed to go because the paper clips are always right here. So it's worth the effort to get it all organized, and then it's also more fun to use it because everything is so perfectly arranged.
So here we had some examples of SI organization in both of these ladies. Do you want to go first, Bar? What were you seeing with both Barbara and Gretchen here, and how they compare?
Sure. So there were a lot of interesting data points that we can talk about. One was, how do they actually decide what need to be organized? The first thing for Barbara was, what do I need a place for? Do I need place for wine because everyone needs wine? Do I need a place to cut vegetables because I'm cooking? And then design the space in a way to align with the things that she needed. She was thinking about what concepts, what ideas, what things she would need a space for. And then Gretchen was going on the opposite way. She was thinking, what are the things that I have, the things that I need, the things that I'm using, and how can I make sure that they have a place that is clear for everyone? Now, the next one was, considering that Barbara stated very explicitly, I am very anal about all the details. How does her kitchen looks like? A bit messy, things didn't really work as well, like the cutting board, she needed to fix it out. Also, when she was opening the closet of her husband, she said, I was buying him a lot of things to organize his things, and it's still messy. In comparison to Gretchen kitchen, it looks like a museum. Everything had a place, everything was organized, nothing was breaking, nothing was shaky. And also she said her family is able to follow it through because they know exactly where to put things. So even her family that are not thinking exactly the same way as her, were not messing up her order. So that was also an interesting point. And yeah, so basically NI people tend to think that we are very anal about the details and that we cover everything out and we are extremely structured. But when we are doing that only when it comes to the actual ideas and the concepts, but we are not doing it with actual physical things. So a lot of time when it comes to implementation, things don't work out exactly the way we want to. In comparison to an SI people, they tend to really think through all the details, and sometimes they don't necessarily think about, okay, so what is the concept that I'm trying to create? Because she was not mentioning, Gretchen was not mentioning anything about, I want the place to be a OMI, or what is the actual usage of having a stepper in my mailbox? Like, why would you need that? She was not thinking about all those things, just like, I have those things and I need a space for them.
Yeah, definitely. It's just the difference between having the idea first and then going to organize the sensory like Barbara does. So the idea is the thing that she is anal about. It's the part what she has organized very well. The actual organizing process in the physical, however, it's there, but it's not like extremely clear list and everything has its exact place. Also, just how generally she expresses what each place contains. Just comparing the amount of sensory examples Gretchen gives you from one container. She goes through all of them. This was on the class too, so this is repetition for those who have seen the Gretchen Rubin class. But it's a very good point, because just the amount of sensory we sensory saviors tend to give, sometimes we are not normally aware of it ourselves, but since we don't trust the pattern enough, we give a lot of sensory examples to then push the one pattern or one equation, whatever, forward. So in Barbara's case, she doesn't need to, she trusts that people will get the idea from the one example she gives, the general topic, general like a class of objects, and that's how it works for her.
Exactly. She opened the closet and she's like, you see, it's messy, and closed it. She didn't go through and explain what is messy there, because it looked quite organized to me. Yeah. And I could take out stuff from that closet. It was not a problem.
Very well avoided explaining why did I have the assumption that it's going to be messy and then it wasn't. So that's also like a very savior, and you don't get confused or shaken when your intuition is wrong. You just move on. So there is that. Okay, do we have something else or shall we move on?
We can move on.
All right, let's go.
When this announcement was first made, you said that this was the best deal that you'd seen in your years.
Absolutely. The best news I had heard in the 40 years I've been in the real estate business.
What's been the fallout since the news came out?
The fallout is that other large companies thinking of following their heels, thinking that New York was the it place to be, the place where you really want to plunk down a ton of money and create a lot of jobs, they're pausing and thinking about it. Everyone saw it as a single deal. I didn't see it that way. I saw it as the beginning of a phenomenal wave that was going to reinvent the city and make everybody say, wow, they've got their game going. They won the bid.
So I started noticing these patterns, and it took me a long time to sort of figure out how all the pieces fit together. And it was really when I understood that the core idea is this idea of expectation, which is such a boring word. I was like searching for a synonym that sounded like juicier. Yeah. But it really does come down to this outer and inner expectations. And once you see that, then all these patterns that seem very disconnected all of a sudden make sense.
I worked my plan my entire life. Simple. Every time I had an extra $480, which represents a 1 month overhead, I took the $480 and I hired a salesperson because I knew I could afford them for 1 month.
That's
and
right.
When they made the extra $480, they hired a salesperson, not they. I hired another one because they made the profit. And then I hired and hired and hired with the $480 until I had until I had 1,000 salespeople and sold my business for $66 million.
Decide in advance. Well, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to practice my guitar for an hour. Because then you've decided, then you don't need to decide again. It's on the calendar, you've decided what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and that kind of specificity is very helpful. And you can pick any kind of value and try to figure out how to make a place for it in your calendar. So for instance, one of the things I talk about in Happier at Home is I wanted to have more time with my older daughter because she's like entering the teen years, and I wanted to make sure we had fun time when it wasn't about chores or nagging or, household stuff. And so I thought, well, if I just said to myself, I want to spend more time with my daughter, it would never happen. It would always be like, oh, some next week, I don't know. So I'm like, we need to put it on the schedule. Every day, every Wednesday, once a week, I pick her up from school, after school, and we do something together for a few hours. And I put it on the schedule. It appeared on the calendar, and that way I really followed through with it. That became a habit. This time with my daughter became a habit. So I have something called Power Hour. So for once a week, for an hour, I tackle some kind of horrible nagging task that I've been putting off for months, probably years, and so I have a habit of doing this thing at this time on the weekend, but I fill it with whatever I want. So you can pick just about anything and find a way to put it on your schedule.
All right, so here we had some Gretchen and Barbara talking about ideas, concepts, plans, whatever. And to me, at least, it seemed very different. Like for Barbara, it's the one major concept, one major plan. And for Gretchen, not so much. It comes from the sensory data points and the patterns scattered from there. And there is a huge difference there. How about you, Bar? What you got?
Yeah, exactly what you also said. So for Barbara, it was the concept of New York. It's gonna be a big thing. Or I have a simple plan. Every person once I reach a certain amount of money, I'm gonna hire another person, and I'm gonna do another person, and that person will hire another person. So it's one specific concept that needs to be followed by everyone that is working with her. But does she actually explain to you how you're supposed to do that concept? No, she doesn't tell you in what amount of money you're supposed to start hiring more people, how many people are you supposed to be hiring, what type of roles are you going to hire that person to do, how many people to hire. She doesn't actually give a proper manual of the sensory information that you need in order to follow that concept. Same with New York. It's going to be a big deal. Okay, what's going to be a big deal there? What exactly does it mean for me as a real estate person if I know now New York is going to be this one big thing that I need to follow? I don't know what it means. In comparison to Gretchen, with Gretchen it was, this is the specific sensory information that you need. You put it on your calendar. You block the time for it. You specify exactly who you're going to meet, what you're going to do. She goes into so much details that you don't have any place for interpretation. You can still choose what you're going to do with your time. Of course, you can say, I'm going to invest time with my daughter. But if you're investing time with your daughter, then you also need to define what investing time in your daughter actually looks like. And what does it actually take in terms of time, and what does it actually mean? Are we going to meet in the park? Are we going to meet at home? Are we going to go to eat ice cream? What are we going to do exactly? That's all predefined. And even given like 1 hour to do those more creative things, that's also scheduled. If it's not scheduled, it's not being followed. In comparison to Barbara, did she say how often you need to actually hire someone? No, you reach $480, you hire the next person. It can take a year, it can take 1 week. It can, and also the other people are expected to do the same. So there is no timeline. There is just like this one data point that triggers something else, but it's all about the concept of once you reach a certain level, then you hire another person. So it's a lot of, the concepts create a lot of sensory data in comparison to the sensory data create one concept.
Exactly. And just the amount of how much Barbara limits the sensory in a way that she uses such a repeatable solution for her business, and how she projects the New York state in this video that we showed. It's just not taking account the actual facts, not actually explaining where her projection is coming from, just going full in on the abstract because that's what she trusts in. Whereas for Gretchen, it's much more about the sensory matters. It matters what happens in the physical realm. So when you are so tied to the physical, you go and you actually need to make it feel real. So for Gretchen, it's not like this abstract, I want to do this. It's not enough. She needs to put it on her calendar. She needs to take the time to organize it. And then when she has done it in the physical, she can then start thinking, what does this actually contain concept-wise? It's just the action itself needs to be organized. Like in Gretchen's case, because she's very clearly SI savior, even though her SI is feminine, if I recall, it's still her need to organize things in the physical is very, very clear, which is why we are using her as an example here. And
And also something that is important is to understand the balance between the SINE and an ISE, right?
Definitely.
So when you're thinking about Gretchen, what does she say? I had to go through organizing the actual data, the actual sensory examples, so I can see the patterns. And only then those patterns made sense. In comparison to Barbara, I see this one pattern, and now I see all those SE possibilities. I see all these tangible things that I could do with it. But if I don't see the concept, if I don't see that New York is going to be the one next thing, I will not see all those possibilities.
In Barbara's case, it's especially since she's on the visual side of board, she talks about her vision a lot. It's literally, she can see it happening and how it's going to go. And then the SE gets added to that vision. And that's how the vision then changes over time. But eventually it will shape itself in a way that it's repeatable, it's scalable, it's one singular solution, whereas for Gretchen, it's not quite that simple. Her simple comes from the physical. But yeah, I think this is it.
Perfect. And it's very important to mention also that everyone can do everything. Also, I can write a manual script of a step-by-step of how to do something. Also, Gretchen can come up with the patterns when needed. The question is, what do you do first? And what do you usually do when it's your default, when you don't overthink about it? And in the right context, one is better than the other. Let's assume now I'm gonna fix my washing machine. If I'm watching a YouTube video of an NI person explaining how to fix a washing machine, I will probably not know how to fix my washing machine. I would rather watch an SI person giving me all the steps concretely, because I will not be able to figure out that sensory details by myself. In comparison to if now I'm taking a group into a creative space and they need to start imagining their future. If I give them too many examples of how the future could look like, I'm taking away from the creativity of the person. So I rather give them the concept and they will figure out the details as they go, but I still need to be there to hold them in the process.
Yeah, definitely there is place for everything and everybody does everything. So that's something to look out for. So instead of going head on, I saw NE, I saw NI, just go and double check. Actually go and see which one comes first, which one serves another. Like Barbara gives a lot of sensory examples in certain occasions, but it's always for her NI idea that comes first. Gretchen can be very skilled and capable with NE and patterns, but she always needs the SI to tie it together, so to say. Okay, I think we are ready to move on.
It usually doesn't match the entrepreneurs, or they would be doing it, all right? But that is nothing more than sales. So that's an easy one, because I'll take the entrepreneur once they become my partner, and sometimes even present it on TV, because I want to see if they're simply open-minded to a change. But once they're my partners, when that contract is done, I immediately sell them on my concept, because I mean it and I know I'm right. In other words, imagine this. And I tell them how rich they could be, because they're motivated by success.
Right.
How happy they would be, because my plan takes into account, of course, their gifts, or I wouldn't be pitching it.
Right.
And I really believe it. I can see it as clear as I could see it as though it exists. And when they listen to me, they buy it. The ability to see the big picture, as everybody calls it, which sounds so ridiculous, of course. But that is definitely a gift I got because I'm dyslexic. With every one of my entrepreneurs who had a learning disability, they all have the same gift. It's naturally, they get it. They can see the field from afar. And that is a wonderful advantage I have that I use day in and day out. So Shark Tank is really well suited for me.
Sure, you've seen the amazing book, Mason Curry's book, Daily Rituals, which is all about the habits of the super genius people. And what you see,
they're all over the place.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
So one person gets up early and one person stays up late, and one person drinks coffee and one person drinks vodka, and one person works in a crowd and one person works all by themselves, and one person works a half an hour a day like Gertrude Stein, and another person works 14 hours a day like P.G. Wodehouse. I mean, it's like, there's just, you can't prescribe. You have to begin by knowing yourself.
So we had Barbara and Gretchen talking about concepts or ideas or something related, and how much sensory did we have. It was sort of a competition here, and Gretchen won, clearly. Like, Barbara had very little sensory details in whole of her talk. She was talking about intuition in general, how she approaches her new cooperatives from Shark Tank and everything, how she sells the concept, and there was no examples in the sensory world. All she did was explain the abstract idea, concept, how she sells her abstractions forward. And then we have Gretchen, who had one idea, concept she needed to explain, and to make sure that everyone will understand, she went on and had a very long comparison list of 8 content parts to prove that one point. So I think this one is pretty obvious.
And the funny part was that although she gave 8 examples on how that concept is relevant, I still cannot prescribe. It's still, you need to decide on the concept that works for you. In comparison to Barbara, it's like, I sell them my concept, and I know I'm right. And I hate that I do that, because I do that sometimes. Like, I think, I figure out the concept, I figure out all the details, so therefore I'm right. There is only my concept, and everyone needs to get on board with my concept.
Yeah.
In comparison to Gretchen, it's like, no, I cannot prescribe your concept. I can only tell you what to do.
There was some talk about, like, NI has tendency, since it's introverted, the patterns and concepts become more personal, whereas NE is more on the side of, it's all on the spectrum and it's not as personal, since it's on the outside, so to say. But yeah, this is a pretty obvious one. Just the amount of sensory. Like, if you ever listen me talk, you can hear that I give generally a lot more sensory examples compared to Austin or Bar here. As an example, Bar is working very hard for her demons, so it actually shows. But it's and then again, if I have to describe a simplified concept or idea, a generalization, I struggle. I want to give all the examples to make sure that everybody is on board. Everybody understands what I mean, because I don't understand the concept easily. Why would others? So these kind of things are something one can be very, very well. All right, let's go see one of our final clips. This is more on the line of how the concepts and patterns work for these ladies.
One thing you talk about a lot in interviews is listening to your gut and hearing your intuition and just going for it. Is that something you always had, or do you think people can learn to get better at listening to their gut?
I think some people don't have it. What do you think about that? I think intuition is what you can pick up between the lines. It's the gray area of life, okay? Not the facts and the figures or the visual sense, but it's like what happens in your mind, what filter do you have in my mind that you have another voice interpreting for you? That's intuition, right? And so some people are naturally intuitive. Kids are, you could pick it up, and some people aren't. I think if you are naturally intuitive to some degree, you can get really good at it by paying attention. And also paying attention to when you're wrong and how you could have sized that up differently. But if you don't have a natural sense of people or interpretation of a situation, it's a rough one to learn.
Resolution for this week is to force yourself to wander, which sounds a little bit paradoxical. Why would you force yourself to wander? How would you force yourself to wander? And really, this resolution has two meanings. First, when you force yourself to wander is creativity, new ideas, fresh thoughts come from going off the path, doing something that you don't usually do. But if you're like me, you find it very hard not to stay in your routine and to get out of that, gerbil cage of your neighborhood and your usual habits. And so I force myself to do things that are going to help me wander. So for example, one thing that I do from time to time, which is really fun, is I go to a big magazine store and I buy 3 magazines that I would never ordinarily buy. Usually I sort of close my eyes and choose at random and read them. And for some reason, it's always very interesting, and it gives me an insight into some weird subculture that I'd never thought of before, and it spurs new ideas for myself. And it's fun, and it's a quick, easy way to leave my usual thought patterns behind.
All right, so there we had it. Barbara was going into very great lengths about her natural intuition, which she has done all her life. I think it's a matter of practice in this regard. I was pointing at myself, not good at reading between the lines of because I so feel that. But with Gretchen, on the other hand, it's not so clear. You have to force yourself to wander, to take the time, to actually make yourself time to get the new ideas from the outside more than, whereas Barbara's is more from the inside, sort of just from the incoming sensory. She just creates the pattern, and it's very natural and flowy to her in comparison.
Yeah, so it's interesting how Barbara says if you're not born with it, it's really hard or impossible to develop it. And then the counter one is Gretchen, you need to force yourself. So this is how they see each other, right? Because what is it for Barbara? Barbara thinks, who are the people that don't have it naturally? And what do they actually need to do? And the work is that way. So just as a comparison, because we don't have videos to show the opposite side, for Gretchen, that's super easy to gather all the details and all the information needed to back up a certain concept and prove it. For Barbara, that will be much harder to go and do an actual proper research and really understand all the details. So for me, when I need to go and do the actual research on something, especially since I'm consumed last, I actually need to force myself. I need to put myself in a room. I need to get all the information that I need, and I need to actually do the research in advance on what information I need, and then really have it in front of me and really take the time in quiet to work that through. And sometimes I will need to read something 5 times until I actually understood it, even though my intuition tells me, oh, you did understand it, but I normally don't. So for me, it will be exactly the same as Gretchen needs to go and wander. I would need to go and sit down and force myself to read again and again the same thing until I really understood it. Like I understood it so much, not just that I can explain it to others, but I can explain it to myself. And that will not be the same thing.
Yeah, and there definitely is like the NI type of going straight to the concept is very handy in many situations. But on the other hand, there is a lot of value in going for the sensory first. It's just when, well, I'm sort of the opposite of all of this because I gather so much data before I settle on any patterns at all. I have huge trouble on trusting patterns unless I have a lot of data that supports it, despite my NI being masculine, so it's rather solid, and my SC is like wee all over the place. But it's still, you are responsible of actually getting the sensory, the reality, what is measurable. So when you have that and then you make a pattern, it takes a lot of time. But once you settle on a pattern, it normally works. And it's highly frustrating when it doesn't work. If you end up making a wrong pattern, you're like, I'm never doing patterns again. So that's like how it actually, especially for people who are typing themselves, you really need, you can't just say, but I understand patterns. Yes, you understand them. How do you actually go for these patterns? Are you doing enormous amount of research? Are you gathering patterns or sensory, so forth? Anyhow, so I think we're basically done. So to wrap it all up, OI, whether NI or SI, they are very similar, but there is a lot of differences. You can go to the intuition route, like, okay, how do they actually deal with patterns? Is it on the spectrum? Several ideas, concepts, more individualized ones, or more general, one solution, one idea, one concept kind of way? How do they deal with sensory? Is it very organized in the physical? Do they gather sensory for the same buckets they have? Or do they look at the facts when they actually go and look at the facts? Are those on the spectrum as more of a general mass? So, yeah, something you want to add before we wrap this up entirely?
Just
Other
that it's so funny you have the guests behind you.
Oh.
And they were coming with their tails. Like,
Yeah. They're so cute.
but
Luckily, they're sleeping now. But
yeah.
yeah.
Just say
it's,
thank you for watching. Thank
yeah,
you for being part of our boot camp. And thank you, Mina, for preparing such a great facilitation. And
I do my best.
hopefully we do it again soon.
Indeed.
Mhm.
However, so thank you for everybody watching. If you have some great ideas you want to share with us, we will gladly take feedback and see if those are doable in reality with the time and resources we have available. If you have something that is clearly just uncertain of something you wish it was made more clear, please contact Austin or me. We will then see what we can do about it. But for this time, OP Bootcamp is going to shut down until the next time. So thank you and bye-bye.
See you later.